I was at the Juneteenth event last night, and President Biden has touted the Inflation Reduction Act and lowering drug prices. But listen to how the event's host, comedian Roy Wood Jr., talked about that achievement.
We have legislation now for cheaper prescription drugs because of this administration. Insulin is down to $35 if you're a senior. And I don't know if anybody here has paid for insulin before, but that is like the bottle service of prescription drugs. So we appreciate that $35 right there.
Congressman Clyburn, I love the relatability Roy Wood Jr. used to break it down. It's funny, but it's telling a policy success story. Does the campaign need to do more of that?
Well, thank you very much for having me, John. Absolutely. We've got to get this out there. This administration has a record that is unequaled, cannot even be imagined by a lot of people who thought about these kinds of things as we went into the last election. This administration, with this rescue plan, has brought young children out of poverty. With its infrastructure bill, is put in $65 billion for internet when we had no money for infrastructure in the previous administration. It's CHIP and Science Act, it's PAC Act, it is Inflation Reduction Act. All of these things people said could not be done. Joe Biden did them. And I get a little irritated when I hear people telling me, well, he isn't talking loud enough. He isn't showing the kind of energy we want. We are about substance, not style. That is what will move this country forward. That is what will leave for our children and grandchildren a country to be proud of. Real substance. You can talk loud, you can misrepresent, you can prance around, but the question is, what are you doing? You know, I grew up in a parsonage, and I used to listen to my dad's sermons. And one of the things I learned early, it is their deeds that make them, not their words. And if you get caught up on the words and don't pay any attention to the deeds, you might believe in Donald Trump. But if you're all about deeds, you will be supporting this president, this administration, Biden and Harris.
Well, let's talk about some more deeds, Congressman Clyburn, because today the Biden administration announced that medical debt can no longer be considered in credit scores. And President Biden has made debt elimination one of his main pitches on the campaign, but new polling shows Americans are split on student loan forgiveness. 3 in 10 adults approve, while 4 in 10 disapprove. How concerned are you about those polling numbers we see on the screen right there?
I think it is because people have misrepresented this whole thing about student loan debt elimination. Joe Biden, if you look at the program, he made it very clear. We are talking about eliminating this compounded interest and all these things that have accumulated beyond what the original debt was. I've got a constituent, not a black constituent, a constituent in North Charleston who wrote a letter to the president with a copy to me. His original loan was $60,000. Over the years, he has paid back nearly $200,000 because of compounded interest and paying for it for more than 20 years and still owed money. So when he eliminated that debt, it was on the compounded interest, not the original loan. And people need to look at that. When I hear Romney, Senator Romney saying that this is a bad deal, how can it be a bad deal? The principal was paid back a long time ago. These people are paying compounded interest that has been put out there by people who are making money when the original principal was paid back a long time ago. So that's what's going on here. So nobody is paying anybody's debt. They paid off the debt. It's the compounded interest that people are collecting, and that's putting people in the poorhouse, as we say down south.
Congressman, let me get you on one more thing before we have to go in a couple minutes. Let's talk about comments that Entertainment 50 Cent made while on Capitol Hill last week. Listen to this.
What do you see as the significance of African-American men in this election for both of you?
I see them identifying with Trump.
Why do you say that?
Because they got RICO charges.
Congressman Clyburn, your reaction, black men are moving to Trump because they've got RICO charges?
Look, he should have been with me last Saturday night at this South Carolina NAACP Freedom Fund dinner. 100% support for Joe Biden. Not one single person in there, male or female, for Donald Trump. He should have been with me at Greater Target Memorial AME Church on Sunday morning. 100% for Joe Biden. Not a single person there for Donald Trump. I don't know where 50 Cent is hanging out, but I hang out with the NAACP. I hang out with the black community, black faith community, and I don't see any support for Donald Trump. These people aren't worried about RICO statutes. They're worried about their children's student loan debt. They're worried about the cost of insulin when it comes to their health care. They're worried about affordable housing. They're worried about broadband deployment. That's what they're getting from this president, and they aren't thinking about whatever it is that 50 Cent is talking about in RICO statutes. The RICO statutes down in Georgia, that is what Donald Trump violated. And so we are upset because he is being called to account for violating the RICO statutes. Come on, 50 cents. That's worth $1 to know better.
My wife is fond of flying flags. That is what Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito said when he blamed his wife for flying 2 different flags at their homes that are associated with the Stop the Steal movement and carried by rioters at the January 6th insurrection. New secret recordings of his wife, Martha Ann Alito, are revealing more about what motivates her to fly flags.
You know what I want? I want a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag because I have to look across the lagoon at the Pride flag for the next month.
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, please don't put up a flag. I said, I won't do it because I'm deferring to you. But when you are free of this nonsense, I'm putting it up and I'm going to send them a message every day. Maybe every week I'll be changing the flags. There'll be all kinds. I made a flag in my head. This is how I satisfy myself. I made a flag. It's white and it's yellow and orange flames around it. And in the middle is the word vergogna. Vergogna in Italian means shame.
That is the wife of a Supreme Court justice being openly hostile to a complete stranger about the Pride flag, a symbol of freedom and equality for the LGBTQ plus community during Pride Month. People like me being proud of who they are makes her mad. It makes her want to send them a message. It makes her want to fly a flag that says shame. This is not a woman who is unclear about the message of the flags that she's flying. And for what it's worth, I don't think anyone would care if they looked across the Potomac and saw a Jesus flag flying. There are lots of Martha Anns in America who also harbored this kind of grievance. But this is Martha Ann Alito. She's not just any random person. She's married to a Supreme Court justice for life, one of the most powerful people in the country who's actively rolling back Americans' constitutional rights. Justice Alito authored the majority opinion revoking nearly 50 years of rights for women when the court overturned Roe versus Wade. And that laid the foundation for another right-wing justice with a right-wing wife, Clarence Thomas, to target the LGBTQ plus community by saying the Supreme Court should reconsider 2 cases that affirm the rights of same-sex couples, including same-sex marriage. Martha Ann Alito longs for the day when 74-year-old Justice Alito is, quote, free of all this nonsense. She's thinking about who will replace him on the court. Are you? Joining me now, Kelly Robinson, president of the Human Rights Campaign. Kelly, thank you for coming back to The Last Word. Your reaction to what we heard from Mrs. Alito?
Shocking. And also not shocking in the same sense. I mean, what she's saying about flags, it's not about flags. It's a dog whistle to MAGA bullies across the board. What she wants to do is use the flag as a symbol to talk about how they want to erase us from public life, to push us back into the closet. And when I think about what today represents, not only is it Pride Month, but tomorrow represents 8 years since a Pulse mass shooting where 49 members of our community, their lives were stolen forever. This kind of violent action and political rhetoric, it leads to real world outcomes. So anyone that's listening to her, anyone that's watching what she says should be very, very concerned, not only about her words, but what it means in terms of the actions of people that are listening to her.
Mm-hmm. There's audio, new audio from Justice Alito tonight. Listen.
I just wanted to ask you, why do you think the Supreme Court is so attacked and being so targeted by the media these days?
Well, I think it's a simple reason. They don't like our decisions, and they don't like how they anticipate we may decide some cases that are coming up. That's the beginning and the end of it.
Kelly, does this sound ominous given the 2 abortion cases and 2 January 6 cases yet to be decided this term?
To me, it sounds hypocritical. I mean, I remember when Barack Obama wore a tan suit and people acted like it was the end of democracy.
Lost their
We're
minds.
talking about right. And now we're talking about a whole Supreme Court justice whose wife is saying things like this, who's espousing these beliefs that are concerning for someone that's on the highest court of the land. So I do think that anyone that is listening to the words that are coming out of Justice Alito's mouth, you should be concerned. But I also know that if you're a person of color, if you're an LGBTQ plus person, if you're a woman or someone who's non-binary, we don't have the luxury of letting our concern and fear put us into a state of paralysis. We have to understand that this is why it is more critical than ever that we get out and we vote this November. Our lives are quite literally at stake.
Mm-hmm. You know, Trump is out there giving comfort to anti-abortion groups, promising to, quote, defend life, while Republicans are not voting to protect conception. Today, a federal judge struck down a Florida ban on transgender care for minors. These all sound like rights this ideological Supreme Court has no interest in protecting.
They don't. They've said the quiet part out loud already. I mean, we have to remember that when Roe v. Wade was overturned and Clarence Thomas's concurrence, he said out loud, the next the court should revisit Obergefell. They should revisit Lawrence. They should revisit Griswold. These are cases that fundamentally asserted our basic rights as LGBTQ plus people in this country and our right to contraception. So anytime they say that these things aren't on the table, that these rights are not at risk, look at what they are doing. We should all, again, be very concerned about what we're seeing, but also take it as a call to action. Because at the end of the day, we still live in a democracy. Our votes still count. And there's something that we can do right now about how this court has gotten so far disconnected from its actual mission in our democracy.
You know, as I mentioned before, I was at the Juneteenth event where I met your beautiful wife last night, but that's not the point why I'm bringing that up. I want to play something that Vice President Harris said last night. Watch.
Across our nation, we witness a full-on attack on hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights, including the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body, the freedom to be who you are and love who you love openly and with pride, the freedom from fear of bigotry and hate, the freedom to learn and acknowledge our nation's true and full history, and the freedom that unlocks all others, the freedom to vote.
How important is it to stress to voters that the Supreme Court is on the ballot in November? What's at stake is more Samuel Alitos or more Ketanji Brown Jacksons?
Exactly. I mean, that's what I saw from Kamala Harris right now. That is leadership. And at the end of the day, when we think about this election that's coming up, it's not just about two candidates. It's actually about two fundamentally different visions for our country, two fundamentally different visions for our futures and for our children. And at the end of the day, when you talk to people, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum, a lot of our fears are the same. Worried that your kids will have a better life than you do today, concerns about inflation, making sure that schools are good and welcoming and safe. But I want to make sure that whoever we elect, that their solutions are about moving us forward and not pulling us back. And what the Supreme Court has shown that they are willing to do, from the overturn of Roe v. Wade to all that they have said and done in the last year, they are willing to roll back the rights, not only of the last 10 years or last 40 years, but of the last 100. We have got to do something about it for the sake of all of our communities, and especially for the sake of our kids.
Kelly Robinson, president of the Human Rights Campaign, thank you very much for coming to The Last Word.
Thank you.